The hall was filled with strange glowing lights. Colors moved like living fire across the walls, and the human stood in the center, his hands bound with silver cords that felt alive. He was not a guest, he was not a husband. He was a prisoner standing in front of hundreds of alien eyes. The aliens whispered in low voices, their faces shining with pale skin and sharp golden eyes. They called him the Forced Groom, a strange title that carried both laughter and fear. At the end of the hall stood the bride, tall and graceful, her skin like polished stone, her hair flowing like liquid silver. She wore armor instead of silk, her crown heavy with jewels that pulsed with power. She did not look at him with love, she did not smile. Her eyes were cold. Sharp and distant, she was a weapon wrapped in beauty, a queen's daughter who had never chosen him. The human's heart pounded. He wanted to scream that this was not his choice, that he never asked for this, but the guards behind him pressed their spears closer, reminding him that refusal meant death. He remembered the moment he was taken, soldiers breaking into his small room, their voices declaring he had been selected. They dragged him through the alien city, past towers that bent toward the sky like black claws, past markets filled with creatures that hissed when they saw him. He had no trial, no chance to escape, only the command of an alien council that decided a human would marry their most powerful daughter. But why him, out of all the humans they could have chosen? Why him? The alien bride raised her hand. The hall went silent. Even the glowing lights froze in their movement. She stepped forward with slow, heavy steps, each one echoing like thunder against the floor. Her voice carried like iron wrapped in silk. "This union is demanded by the council," she said. "It is not of my choosing, nor of his." The crowd shifted, whispers turned louder. Some aliens looked angry, others amused. But all of them stared at the human like he was an animal about to be displayed. The human felt his chest tighten. He searched the bride's face for even a flicker of kindness, but found only fire locked behind ice. A priest-like figure stepped forward, his robes filled with symbols that glowed as if alive. He began to chant in a language the human did not understand. Every word vibrated in his bones, making him weak. The bride stood still, her face carved from stone, but her eyes moved for only a moment, glancing at him, sharp and full of something hidden, maybe anger, maybe sorrow, maybe both. The human thought, "She does not want this any more than I do." Yet the chains bound him, the council watched, and the ceremony pushed forward like a machine that could not be stopped. He felt the air grow colder. Shadows moved at the edge of the hall, like something unseen was watching, waiting, and deep in his chest, he realized this wedding was not just a prison. It was a trap. He was not being married to an alien bride. He was being thrown into a game of power, a game where love had no place, where every choice could mean his life. The chanting grew louder, the crowd pressed closer, and the bride's hand was extended toward him, glowing with strange energy. The human swallowed hard, his mind racing with fear and questions. Would she destroy him or protect him? Would she ever choose him? Or would she let him die as nothing more than a pawn in her people's war? And as their hands almost touched, the hall lights flickered, shadows whispered, and he knew this was only the beginning. The hall was silent after the wedding words were spoken. The human felt the cold weight of chains loosen, but not the weight inside his chest. The ceremony was finished, yet nothing was complete. The alien bride stood tall beside him, her hand never truly touching his. The crowd cheered with hollow voices. The council smiled with empty eyes. It was not a celebration, it was a sentence. He was led to a grand chamber high in the palace, walls carved with glowing runes. Windows opened to the endless alien city below. Towers of black stone stretched to the sky, filled with lights like stars trapped in cages. The bride entered after him. Armored guards closed the doors, and for the first time they were alone. Her gaze was sharp as a blade. She removed her crown and placed it on the table with a heavy sound. The jewels flickered like dying fire. "You think I wanted this," she said, her voice low, almost bitter. "You think I chose you?" The human swallowed, his throat dry. "No," he whispered. "I can see you didn't." For a moment, her expression softened, then hardened again. "Good. Then understand this marriage is not between us. It is between power and survival." She turned away from him, looking out at the alien city. Her silver hair caught the strange moonlight. "My mother, the Empress, forced this union. She believes binding our blood to yours will end the rebellion in the outer worlds. But she is blind. She does not see the danger inside our own court." The human stepped closer, careful with every word. "Danger," he asked. From who? The bride's eyes flickered with something hidden. Fear or anger, he could not tell. There are clans who want me dead. And now they will want you dead too. You are their excuse. They will say a human weakens us. They will say your blood poisons our line. He felt his heart pound faster, each word cutting deeper. So I am not a husband. I am a weapon. Her lips curled in a bitter smile. Yes, a weapon and also a shield. They will strike at you to wound me. They will strike at me to silence you. We are tied together, not by love, but by chains of blood and fear. The chamber grew colder, the silence heavy. He thought of the whispers in the hall, of the shadows that moved when no one else looked. And he felt the truth in her words. He asked softly, "Then why not refuse them?" "Why not fight?" Her laugh was sharp. "Without joy, you do not know my people, human. Refusal is weakness. Weakness is death. I fight by standing still. I survive by obeying, but in silence I plan, I watch. I wait." She turned toward him again, her eyes burning like stars trapped in ice. "You are not my choice, but now you are my burden and maybe my ally. If you can survive," the human clenched his fists, anger rising in his chest. He was no pawn, no toy, no weakling to be cast aside, but he stayed quiet, his mind turning. He remembered Earth, his home, the smell of rain, the warmth of freedom, and it felt so far away. But he also remembered something else, humanity's stubborn fire, the will to fight even when crushed. Maybe that was why he was chosen. Maybe they thought a human could be broken, but he would not as the night grew deeper. He lay on the hard alien bed, unable to sleep. The bride stood at the window watching the city below, her hand resting on the hilt of a blade hidden in her robes. She did not trust him. He did not trust her, yet in that silence, both knew the same truth: someone would come for them soon. Someone who wanted the union broken before it could change the future. And when that happened, the question would no longer be about marriage. It would be about survival. The next morning began with a sound like thunder. Heavy alien drums echoed through the palace walls. The human opened his eyes to find armored guards standing at the door, their faces hidden behind dark masks. They said nothing, only gestured for him to follow. He was led through long corridors carved from black stone, the air thick with the smell of burning oils, walls lined with glowing banners that shifted like living fire. Every alien they passed stopped to stare. Some sneered, some whispered. Others spat on the ground as he walked by. To them, he was not a man. He was a symbol, a stranger forced into their most powerful bloodline. At the end of the corridor, the doors opened to a massive chamber. It was a training hall filled with warriors. Their weapons glowed with strange energy, their eyes sharp like hunting beasts. The bride was there, standing tall in silver armor, her hair tied back, her eyes colder than the steel around her. She pointed at him without a word, and one of the warriors stepped forward, blade in hand. The human froze, realizing what this was: not a greeting, not a lesson. It was a test. The warrior moved fast, too fast for human eyes. The blade cut through the air toward him. He stumbled back, grabbing the first thing he could find, a staff hanging from the wall. His hands trembled, but his spirit did not. The clash rang through the hall, wood against steel, sparks flying. The crowd of warriors laughed, calling him weak, calling him prey, but he stood his ground, blocking again and again, each strike pushing him closer to the floor. The bride watched in silence, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. She gave no order to stop, no hint of mercy. The human's breath burned in his chest, sweat ran down his face. The staff cracked under the weight of the warrior's weapon. One more strike and it would break, but in that moment instinct rose. He twisted, letting the blade strike the stone instead. Shards flew, and with all his strength, he struck the warrior across the chest, sending him stumbling back. The hall fell silent, the laughter died. The human stood shaking but still standing, his staff broken yet still in his hand. The warrior growled, ready to attack again, but the bride raised her hand. Her voice cut through the silence. "Enough," she said, cold and sharp. "He is not as weak as you thought." The warriors bowed, some with respect, others with anger. The human felt their eyes burning into him. He had won no friends here, only more enemies later. In the quiet of the chamber, the human sat alone. His hands still trembling, he thought of Earth, of the fights he had back home. Fights for food, for survival, and he realized something. Humans had always been underestimated. By nature, by enemies, by fate itself, and yet they survived. They adapted, they fought. The bride entered, her steps light but strong. She stood across the room, her face still cold. yet her eyes softer than before. "You are not trained," she said, "but you fought with fire." He looked at her, tired, angry, yet proud. "I will not be their toy if they want me broken. They will have to kill me." For a moment, her lips almost curved into a smile, but it faded as quickly as it came. "Do not mistake this for acceptance," she said. "You are still a stranger, still a risk, but perhaps not hopeless." The words hung in the air. Heavy and strange, she left without another glance, leaving him alone again. That night he could not sleep. Whispers carried through the palace halls, voices speaking in the alien tongue. Words he could not understand, but the tone was clear: plots, secrets, danger. And though the bride had not said it aloud, he knew in his heart enemies were moving in the shadows, enemies who wanted not only the human dead, but the bride as well. Days passed inside the alien palace, but to the human, each hour felt like walking on a blade. Eyes followed him wherever he went. Whispers chased his every step. The council pretended to welcome him, but their smiles were too sharp, their words too heavy. They spoke of unity and alliance, yet their tone carried poison. The bride walked beside him in the council chamber, tall and cold, her armor shining like silver fire, her silence stronger than words. She was feared, but even she was not safe. At night, the palace grew darker. Shadows moved in the halls. Sometimes he felt the air shift as if unseen figures were watching, waiting. One evening, as he returned from the training hall, he noticed his door slightly open, the air inside colder than before. His heart pounded as he pushed it wider. On the table lay a dagger, curved and black, with alien letters carved into the blade. Beside it was a strip of red cloth soaked in something dark. It was not a weapon for him to use, it was a warning, a promise that someone wanted him gone. The bride entered moments later, her eyes narrowing at the sight. She took the blade in her hand, her voice low and sharp. "The clan of shadows," she whispered. "They move faster than I thought." He frowned. "They want me dead." She turned her gaze toward him, her voice colder. "No, they want me dead. Killing you is only the path to reach me." Her words struck him heavy and sharp. This was not only his battle, it was hers too. They were both pawns in a game where every move could spill blood. That night, she ordered him to walk with her through the hidden passages of the palace, tunnels carved in stone beneath the floors, walls lined with old symbols that pulsed with faint light. "This palace has two faces," she said, her voice echoing in the narrow halls. "One above for the council to display their power, one below for those who wish to survive." They moved through darkness, passing guards who swore loyalty to her, not the council, men and women with scars of old battles, warriors who bowed their heads when she passed. The human began to see another side of her, not only a cold bride forced into duty, but a fighter surrounded by enemies, a woman carrying the weight of survival. They entered a hidden chamber filled with maps and glowing crystals. The bride placed the black dagger on the table, her eyes sharp. "This is not just a marriage, human. This is a war." He stepped closer, his hands on the map. "Then why keep me here? Why not send me away? I am only a risk to you." Her gaze locked onto his, fire behind her calm face. "Because you already stood against my warriors and lived. Because you did not kneel, because your weakness is not weakness at all. It is something they cannot understand." The human felt his chest tighten, her words like sparks on dry wood. He was still unwanted, still a stranger, but maybe, just maybe, he was becoming something more. Suddenly a horn echoed through the palace. Deep and sharp, the walls trembled, footsteps thundered above. Shouts in alien tongues filled the air. The bride's hand went to her blade. Her eyes narrowed. "They are here," she said. "The shadows have come." The human grabbed a spear from the wall, his breath heavy, his heart burning. He knew this was the moment. The palace above them was no longer safe. The hidden war had reached their doorstep, and in that storm of danger, human and alien bride would have to stand together, or both would fall. The alarm echoed through the palace like a storm. Red lights burned along the walls. The sound of weapons clashing filled the air. The human gripped the spear tighter. His breath fast, his heart pounding, the bride stood beside him, her silver armor glowing under the faint light, her eyes cold but alive with fire. She drew her blade, its edge humming with strange energy. "Stay close," she said, her voice steady. "They will come for us first." The doors of the hidden chamber burst open. Shadows spilled inside. Assassins wrapped in black armor that seemed to drink the light, their movements silent, their blades sharp and curved. The human felt fear bite at his chest, but he pushed it down. When the first assassin rushed forward, he raised his spear. The clash rang like thunder. Sparks flew as steel met steel. The bride moved like lightning, her strikes fast. Each blow cutting down an assassin. Her power filled the room, but the shadows kept coming. Wave after wave, their numbers endless. The human fought with desperation, blocking, striking, stumbling, yet refusing to fall. One assassin's blade cut across his arm. Blood ran, but he held his ground, his anger stronger than pain. He remembered Earth, the fights he survived, the hunger, the fear, and he knew one truth. Humans never quit. Not in the dirt of their world. Not in the heart of an alien palace. He roared and struck. His spear piercing an assassin's chest, the body fell, and for the first time the shadows hesitated. The bride glanced at him, a flicker of surprise in her cold eyes. But she said nothing, her blade kept moving, her body a storm of steel and silver fire. Together they pushed forward step by step, until the last assassin fell to the floor. The chamber filled with silence, broken only by their heavy breathing. The human leaned on his spear, blood dripping from his arm, his chest burning. "They wanted us both dead," he said, his voice heavy. The bride wiped her blade clean, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "And they will not stop," she replied. This was only the beginning. For the first time, she looked at him not as a burden, not as a forced groom, but as a fighter, someone who stood beside her when even her own people wished her gone. She stepped closer, her voice lower now. "You should have fallen, you should have broken, yet you stood." "Why?" He met her gaze, his breath still ragged. "Because I will not let them own me." "Not them? Not your council, not anyone. If they want me broken, they will have to kill me." Her lips almost curved into something close to a smile, but it faded as quick as it came. Still, her eyes held something different now. Not just ice, but a spark of respect. They left the hidden chamber, walking through dark passages until they reached a higher hall. The bodies of slain guards lay scattered, the air thick with smoke. The palace was still under attack. The bride raised her blade, her voice firm. "If we are to survive, we fight together." The human nodded, his grip tight on the broken spear, his body weak but his spirit burning. "Then let's fight," he said. And in that moment a bond began to form. Not of love, not yet, but of fire and survival, a bond stronger than chains. Outside, the war in the palace raged. The council's enemies moved like shadows in the night, and deep within the heart of it, a human and an alien bride stood side by side, ready to break the fate forced upon them. The palace smelled of smoke and blood, broken banners hung from the walls, and the sound of battle still echoed far away. The human stood with his spear cracked and bloody, his body trembling but his spirit unbroken. The bride stood beside him, her silver armor marked with cuts, her blade dark with the blood of shadows, her breathing heavy but her posture tall. She was not defeated, and neither was he. When the council gathered, their faces were pale with fear but twisted with anger. They looked at the human as if he had caused the attack, their words sharp and cruel. "This human weakens us," one counselor hissed. "Remove him, or we all fall." The bride's voice cut through the chamber. Cold and steady, he stood where your guards fled. He fought where your warriors failed. Without him, I would be dead, and your throne would already belong to the shadows. The council fell into silence, their eyes burning with rage, but their tongues trapped by truth. Still, their leader raised a hand, his voice dripping with poison. "Then prove it. Prove your bond before all, or accept that this marriage is nothing but dust." The human felt the weight of those words. They were not asking for love. They were demanding submission, a display of loyalty that could chain him forever. Later, in the quiet of their chamber, the bride sat by the window, her eyes lost in the dark city below. The moons painted her face in silver light. She spoke without turning. "They will break us if we do not show them strength. But strength to them is not just battle. It is union." The human stood across the room, his body sore, his arm wrapped in cloth, his voice low. "They want you to choose, but not freely. They want you to bow." She turned, her eyes meeting his, sharp but burning with something deeper. "And you, human, what do you want?" He took a breath, his chest heavy with truth. "I want to live. I want to fight. I want to prove that I am more than a tool in their hands. But I will not be a prisoner to their chains." Her face softened for the first time, her voice almost a whisper. "Nor will I." Before more could be said, the doors burst open. Assassins once again stormed the chamber, this time their blades aimed at both their hearts. The bride moved first, her blade cutting through the air. The human grabbed a fallen weapon from the floor. The clash was fast, louder than thunder. Blood and sparks filled the room. They fought side by side. Every strike timed, every step matched. The human blocked a blade meant for her. She cut down an assassin about to strike him from behind. Their movements no longer strangers, but one rhythm, one fire. When the last shadow fell, silence returned, heavy and sharp. The human dropped the blade, his chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. The bride stepped closer, her hand almost reaching his shoulder, but stopping just before. Her eyes burned with something new. Not just duty, not just survival, but choice. "You should not have stood this long," she whispered. "Yet you did." Again and again he met her gaze, his voice steady. "Because this fight is mine now too. Not just yours." For a moment, silence wrapped them, and in that silence, something unspoken grew, fragile but real. A bond born not from force, but from battle and fire. Far away, the council waited for proof. Far away, enemies gathered for the next strike. But in that chamber under the silver moons, the alien bride and the human knew their story was no longer one of chains. It was becoming something else, something the council would never control, something the shadows would never break. The council chamber shook with the weight of voices, the air filled with anger and fear. The alien lords argued like wolves over meat. Some demanded the human's death. Others whispered that the bride had betrayed her people. The empress sat high upon her throne, her eyes heavy like stone, her silence colder than ice. When she finally spoke, the chamber froze. "Tonight the bond must be proven before the eyes of all, or the marriage ends, and with it your lives." The human stood in the center, his hands clenched, the bride beside him, her armor scarred from battle, her blade still dark with blood, her gaze steady but her heart heavy. This was the final test, not of battle but of choice. The council wanted a display, something to bind them forever or to break them apart. As the hall filled with firelight, the clan of shadows struck again, their blades slicing through the air, their bodies moving like smoke. This was no test staged by the council. This was war. The guards fell quickly, the council scattered in panic. But the empress sat still, her eyes burning. The human raised his weapon, his body weak but his will burning brighter than ever. The bride shouted orders, her voice sharp, her blade cutting through the assassins, but their numbers were too many. They surrounded the human, their eyes full of hate. He fought with all he had, striking, blocking, bleeding, every wound a fire in his flesh. But he did not fall, he could not while she stood beside him. One assassin leapt at the bride, his blade aimed for her throat. The human saw it, and without thought he threw himself between them. The blade struck his side. Pain exploded, but he drove his own weapon into the assassin's chest. Both falling together, the bride caught him before he hit the floor, her cold hands trembling for the first time, her eyes wide with something fierce, something human. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You will not die." "Not for me." He forced a weak smile, blood on his lips. "I told you. This fight is mine too," her heart thundered. And in that moment the truth came alive in her. She had never chosen this union, but now she chose him not for the council, not for her mother, not for duty, but because he had shown her something stronger than power. Love born in fire, loyalty without chains. She rose, her eyes burning with fury. Her voice thundered across the chamber. "Hear me, council, hear me. Shadows, hear me, mother. This human is mine. Not by your order, not by your chains, but by my choice." Her power exploded, her blade glowed like a star. She cut through the remaining assassins with strikes that shook the hall. No one could stand against her fury. The shadows broke and fled, their rebellion shattered for now. When silence returned, the empress watched with eyes sharp as daggers. The council bowed their heads in fear. The bride stood tall, the human weak in her arms but alive. She turned to them all, her voice calm but filled with fire. "This marriage will not be your weapon. It will not be your chain, it is ours, and if you move against him, you move against me." The human looked up at her, pain heavy in his body but a smile on his lips. He had come as a prisoner, as a pawn. But now he stood as her choice, her partner. The chamber was silent, but the future roared in the air. War would come again, enemies would rise, but the bond between them had been forged, not by force but by fire, and for the first time since he had stepped into that alien hall, the human felt something he thought he had lost: hope.